Hello, I'm Matthew Waterhouse, and this is the Sirens of Audio.
Shindig.
I was going to say dalliance. Shindig, that's a good thing. And I'm very sorry to say that you missed Chris Bidmead.
I had no idea what was going on, but I really, really liked that.
Bizarre words and concepts.
Some of those hideous memories of the hospital corridors of the Invasion of Time.
Oh, I love it.
I like that. Part of the reason why I listened to it was you said, don't bother.
But it's fascinating stuff. And yeah, it's really, really worth watching.
G'day, audiophiles. This is the Sirens of Audio, the show that explores the universe of Doctor Who and other cult TV in the audio medium. My name's Dwayne.
And my name's Philip. G'day, Dwayne. G'day, audiophiles. And we have a special guest with us today. Welcome, Troy.
Hello, gentlemen. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. It's been about 6 months since we've seen you, Troy. We had our little
Shindig.
I was going to say dalliance. Shindig, that's a good thing. Shindig around Melbourne with Matthew Waterhouse. We had a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, it was really good, wasn't it? It was great to see him in Melbourne and spend some time with him as well. Hear those stories.
Only a few more weeks and we'll be doing it all again with Carol Ann.
Carol Ann. And all the stories she must have to tell about the new sort of the Disney season 2 aspects that were meant to happen but weren't. I mean, it'll be interesting to see what she says.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
How's all the arrangements going for that, Philip? We're all on track and ready to roll?
I would have said yes until 2 days ago, and there's been a few things thrown at she's fine. She's coming out, not a problem on other things, but there's just been a couple of hiccups along the way. I'll tell you about that later. But all's fine.
Okay. Excellent. Today is a special episode. We've come back to record a little bit sooner than I expected because we had the recent announcement that Christopher H. Bidmead had passed away, and so I thought it might be a good opportunity to get together and talk about some of the eras of Doctor Who that are really close to my heart as a young fan back in the day when his season came out, particularly season 18, and talk about his writing. So I thought we'd come on and do that. But before we do, Troy, I want to talk to you just for a couple of minutes because not only was Chris Bidmead a writer and a successful writer for Doctor Who, but you are also a writer and were inspired in your writing from Doctor Who. So tell us a bit about you, a bit of your writing journey and where you're at now.
No worries, sure. I've published 2 young adult crime novels, which I can talk about in a sec. And I think the inspiration for them, if I'm honest, kind of comes partly from Agatha Christie, because I love crime and I also like the way that she writes, and the other part from Terrance Dicks. I think there's a whole generation of us that were kind of taught to love reading by Terrance Dicks novelizations, and I was certainly one of them. And there's something about all of those Doctor Who Target novels. I think the short chapters, the structure that he tended to follow, clear, succinct, sharp descriptions and dialogue that I think is kind of embedded in me. And so in many ways, I feel like the writing style of Terrance Dicks plus the criminess of Agatha Christie are the 2 sort of inspirations behind my 2 books. And so the first one's called Gus and the Missing Boy, and it's about a 15-year-old boy who finds a mysterious photo on a missing kid's website, and it looks just like him. And it makes him sort of question who he is, question his identity. It makes him wonder, could his mother be his kidnapper, for instance? And there's a second book that's come out. So he has to investigate this crime, this old kidnapping crime, and hijinks ensue and mystery and all sorts of fun and stuff. And then the next book in the series, I guess, is if 2 books is a series. I'm never quite sure. The next book is Gus of the Burning Stones, and Gus and his friends end up going to an off-the-grid community because they get a message that Gus's mother might be there. And at that community, there's a mysterious stone circle, and then they find a dead body. And so, again, there's lots of sort of mystery and fun. But I think the Doctor Who connection with these 2 books, beyond the fact that I think Terrance Dicks was an amazing writer, the 2 of the 3 main characters are quite sort of strong Doctor Who fans. So in the first book, while Gus's identity is all over the place and he's really confused what's going on, there are references to things like flux. And in the new book, because there's actually a stone circle in this book, there's several references to the stones of blood. Of course there is. How could there not? So yeah, they're my 2 books, and that's the sort of Doctor Who connection to them.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I picked up certainly on reading the first book because the second book's only just come out. But the first book, all of the references to Uncle Terry and different Doctor Who references throughout the book was.
I mean, how could I not? I've got a room full of Doctor Who books. How could I not include that?
Yeah. It took me right back to those days where, before video recorders were out, that was their only way to get repeat sort of viewings in our head of Doctor Who. And so I used to go to the library and borrow lots of Target books, and I ended up buying them. I left school really early, so I could buy lots of the Target books too with my wages. So I spent a lot of time in my room reading those books and getting totally engrossed. As fans these days, I'm not sure what it's like these days because there was effort involved in tracking these stories down, whereas now it's all just available. Sometimes, even on streaming, it's just there on demand whenever you want it, and there seems to be less effort. I think that effort involved in going and seeking out those stories was part of it. I
think there's a school of thought. And it's interesting when you think about audio stories as well. There's a school of thought that when you're reading a book, it is a very active exercise, whereas like if you're kind of sitting back just watching an episode, that can be quite a passive experience. And I think listening to an audiobook, which is absolutely reading, don't get me wrong, but again, it's a different experience because I know a lot of people that will clean the house or, listen to an audiobook on big trips, which is, you can't really read a book while you're driving a car or vacuuming the house. So there's an interesting place where all of these things sit.
Yeah, for sure. So where can we get your books for anyone who's interested? Where can we get them?
Oh, in all, these books are sold in all good bookstores. Certainly, I know that I think Dymocks has a large stock of them, and Dymocks is obviously a big chain that you can find in every state. Certainly, here in Melbourne, Readings and a few other of their independent stores. Ironically, I'm just waiting for a list because I'm going up to Sydney next week. I'm waiting for a list of all the stores that have got it in Sydney, so I can't really tell you that at the moment. But and always there's Booktopia and Amazon and all of the other places. So yeah.
And we'll put links, of course, in the show notes for this episode. So anyone who's interested, just check out the notes and we'll link you straight to Troy's books.
Cool. Can I say, having read the first book, it was excellent. And I really couldn't put it down. It was just read, and a very exciting twist at the end. So, yeah, lots of great tropes along the way, but a really excellent read and something I'd never thought of before in terms of the whole could I have been kidnapped storyline. It was a brilliant concept. Loved it.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. That's really sweet of you to say.
Very good. All right. We are going to talk about Christopher H. Bidmead in a moment, but there are a couple of things we need to do first. We need to jump down the rabbit hole, of course, but first, I want to give both of you a little quiz, and I'm wondering who I should get to go first to see who gets these in order. What I would like to do is ask each of you, if you can, you know how we've memorized the doctors, we know certain script editors, but the script editor's job was much more important in the classic era than it ever has been in the revived era. I want to know if you know all the script editors off by heart. So, Troy, I'm not going to get you to go first. I'll get Philip to go first because I love Philip squirming.
Lovely.
So David Whittaker,
So-
was the first one.
Yep.
Oh, is that what I'm doing?
Yeah, go through, see if you see how many you can get in order. And if you skip some, doesn't matter. We'll just see how many you can remember.
Okay, so David Whittaker was first, and then the one who wrote the Monk story, Dennis Spooner, was next, I think, and then Donald Tosh will be next.
The three
Then
Ds.
Cyberman guy, Jerry Davis.
Very good. You're going well so far.
Ooh, that gets us into Patrick Troughton, doesn't it? No, I've lost it now. There must be another one. Oh, hang on. Derek Sherwin, is he in there somewhere? Or is he just a producer?
He is, but there are two before him.
Peter Bryant.
And there are... Yes, correct.
Is he before him?
Yes. And there was
I'm
one between Peter Bryant and Derek Sherwin who only did one story.
Oh, seriously? But he became a producer. Is
But,
that right?
So that's okay.
Okay,
No,
anyhow,
he
yeah,
did
okay.
not become producer.
Again, okay. So let's go to John Pertwee here, because I can't think who that is. Maybe Troy will pick that up afterwards. Terrence Dix, because then Barry Litz in the huge Terrence Dix period. There's no one else is there in between. Then Robert Holmes. Then we get a bit strange, don't we?
It gets messy.
It gets messy. There's a Douglas Adams is in there, but there's someone before Douglas Adams. I can't think who it is. Is that right? Someone before Douglas Adams?
Correct. Yep. Flag those, Troy. You can come in with those later.
Okay, so after Douglas Adams, is that Anthony Root, Eric Saywood, and the young guy? I can't think of his name. The last 2 years. Oh, that's awful. Oh,
I'll give you the initials. AC.
It made it worse for me.
Oh,
No, sorry. Who's it?
put him out of his
I know-
misery, Troy.
Andrew Cartmel.
Oh, of course, Andrew Cartmel. Yep. Okay.
And I'm very sorry to say that you missed Chris Bidmead.
Oh no!
You went straight from
I kept thinking that.
You went straight from Douglas Adams to Anthony Root.
Sort of like irony.
Oh, I'm very, very impressed because particularly the black and white ones, I would have struggled to remember those because we don't usually talk about, we talk about the Dix era, the Holmes era, the Bidmead era, but we don't talk so much about the eras from the black and whites. But who was the one that did the single story? Do you remember, Troy?
Victor Pemberton.
Correct.
Oh,
Well done.
really? Okay.
I think he just did. Was it 2 with the Cybermen or Fury from? Oh no, he wrote Fury from the Deep. Must have been 2 with the Cybermen then.
Yeah, Tomb of Cybermen it was. Temporary assignment it's got down here. And the one in between Holmes and Adams?
Anthony Reid, Tony Reid.
Correct. That's it. We got him.
Okay.
But I'm totally impressed with you, Philip, getting most of those right.
Yeah.
It was painful.
Well done. Well done. Your prize will be to get a personal meet and greet with Carol Ann Ford in a few weeks' time.
Fantastic.
Very good. All right. So, with that done and dusted, we have to do one more thing, Philip. Do you know what?
Oh, wasn't that the rabbit hole?
No, that wasn't the rabbit hole. Not even close.
Then we better go down the rabbit hole then.
Oh, come on. Join in with the fun. Let's go. All right, so down the rabbit hole, we're talking about Chris Bidmead as a script editor, but he is one of the script editors, along with Philip Hinchcliffe, who progressed from script editing the TV series to Big Finish, and they did some Big Finish stories. And I want to ask you the question. I'll start with you, Philip, and then Troy, you can chime in, because I want to get your thoughts on what you think as a writer that you could do in regards to this question too. How have they gone transitioning from television to audio? We've had others like we've had theatre writers like Rob Shearman go from theatre to audio to TV.
Andrew
I think we'd
Cartmel.
all agree that was pretty successful. Yeah, Cartmel was another one who was a script editor that went to audio. In the books, we had Paul Cornell, Mark Gatiss, Jonathan Morris. They transitioned from novels to Johnny Morris they all did audio, but particularly Gatiss and Cornell went to TV as well. What are your thoughts? Do you think it's a successful transition most of the time, if not all the time?
I think it depends who it is. So I'd have to go through those all individually, whether it worked or not. I do think a transition from play to play is easier. So those who wrote books, fantastic job that they've done with their books. It's much harder going from writing a book to an audio. It's a very different medium. Whereas I think generally people who are playwrights like Rob Shearman, I think very successfully went from play to play. I suspect the television writers may have had a bit more trouble because they're so used to the visual medium as well as the audio. A playwright is very used to, generally speaking, if you're writing a play, you're telling stories, and usually in past tense. It's usually characters telling you about things that happened. So it's a lot more spoken, a lot less visual. You can have some impressive sets, but you can't change a lot of sets and things on the whole. Especially with a play, it's usually 3 or 4 characters, static space, one set, and telling stories. So I think that transition works really easy to audio because that's what an audio is, just a play. But when you're used to writing lots of prose or lots of visuals, it's often harder to make that transition. And you can sometimes feel the fact they've tried to do that visual, certainly in terms of Renaissance of the Daleks, with Christopher Bidmead's his whole city made out of Daleks stuck together was very much a visual thing he was trying to get across, which I must admit didn't work for me. But it's using visual cues because it's all about the visual storytelling. And sometimes you then always talk stuff to try and give the visuals away. But generally speaking, yeah, it works. But there's a lot more top-notch Big Finish writers who haven't done television and things. You don't need. You're not a better writer because you've done the TV show. In fact, there's many Big Finish writers I think are far better than any of the people that transitioned from the TV show across.
Oh, when it comes to stories, for sure.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of getting them down and translating them properly into the medium. Troy, as a writer, how would you feel about tackling audio after writing a book?
I think it's an interesting question. If you're writing audio first, and that is something that obviously Big Finish has been doing for a long time, but it's also a model that companies like Audible have really taken over now, and they're actually they're commissioning authors to write audio first books that they can offer as exclusive to their subscribers. So actually this audio first thing, writing specifically for audio, even though there may be a published novel version of it in 6 months or 12 months, is actually a model that's really evolving quite fast out there. So I think that when I have written my books, a lot of it's just so-and-so walks in the room, and most of my drafting is dialogue. So I feel like I start with dialogue because I kind of, sounds wanky, but I hear them in my head. So I think I start with dialogue, and then a lot of the rewriting process is more about fleshing out the place where they are or inner monologues or different things like that. But a lot of it is just dialogue for me. So I think it's a good place to start, and it's a way. So I think, sounds like a plug, I think that my books would translate well into audio because of that.
Have you considered the possibility of turning your stories into audio drama?
Yes, we're hoping that will happen soon.
Nice. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
I know a young scriptwriter.
Oh, well, yes, you do, don't you? I was thinking about who has done this best, and I keep coming back to someone like Mark Platt, who's done Ghostlight. He's written novelizations. He's obviously done audio. Arguably one of the best audios ever with Spare Parts. There seems to be a certain sort of, consensus around that with a lot of fans. But also, even like, didn't he write Downtime or one of those sorts of things? He's actually been doing all of these different versions, and I feel like he's a good example of someone who's been doing it really well, or from my point of view anyway.
Yeah, he has very successfully crossed over many of those things. The only problem I personally have with Mark Platt's writing is that sometimes on audio he can be way too experimental for me and for my brain to visualize. If I can't visualize it, I'm not going to enjoy the story. So Spare Parts is a great example of an amazing Mark Platt story, but there are several out there that are virtually unlistenable for me. But he has gone successfully from... But, I mean, people say that about Ghostlight too, that it's a confusing story and he packs a lot of different things, interesting things in there. And I love Ghostlight, but it is a little bit incomprehensible unless you're really focusing on what he's trying to do. As far as Hinchcliffe and Bidmead go, we might talk about Chris Bidmead's stories in a second, but... Philip Hinchcliffe, basically he went to Big Finish. Well, first of all, they had the lost stories like Foe from the Future and a couple of other ones that didn't get through. They adapted those. Then he came up with a couple of basic ideas that someone else adapted. And I think the real success of Philip Hinchcliffe was the duo of him and Robert Holmes. So because he was on his own, it just wasn't the same. They were trying to recreate Robert Holmes in that style, but it was Robert Holmes and him together that made that perfect, I think. And it's the same with Barry Letts and Terrence Dicks. When Barry Letts went and did the Paradise of Death and the Ghosts of End Space on his own without Dicks, no, that just didn't work as well. Would you agree with me there, Philip?
No, definitely. I mean, I think Barry Letts' stories worked really well in the series. What have you got? You got the Time Monster, which I think is fun. Planet Spiders and the Demons. So they're the three he wrote. All of those work, I think, very successfully. I mean, they're different, have different purposes, but I think they work really well. And you're right, without Terrence editing him for Ghosts of End Space and the other one, it just doesn't quite work. Well, Terrence writes brilliantly, regardless, though.
Yeah, well, he's one that did crossover from TV to... Well, he wrote all the novelizations. He did some new adventures and some missing adventures as well.
No audio stories, though.
I think he did one. He only did one. It was Comeback, wasn't it? The first Sarah Jane Smith one.
Yes, you're right. He did. Oh, and that was great too. Actually, that was good.
Fantastic. Yeah. So he translated across all three of those perfectly.
I guess so, he knew Sarah Jane as a character really well, though, didn't he? And probably, created her or half created her with Barry anyway.
Yeah.
For sure. Very good. All right. Well, since we're talking about script editors and crossing over, let's talk for a moment about the Big Finish stories that Bidmead did while we're in the rabbit hole. Get that done and dusted. Not that I'm wanting to get it over and done and dusted quickly. Let's go to a trailer first, and then we'll get some facts and trivia.
Calling the doctor. Calling the doctor. Please respond.
This is all very nice, but I have no idea who you are.
Never mind, I'm a lady. I'm a goddamn major. Major Alice Hunniford, and you'll respect the rank.
Doctor, I'm on a hill called Elliot's Salient. I still can't hear you, Doctor.
That's no Dalek.
Hey, quit that, Buster.
Oh, gross. They got what they deserve. Damn Yankee traitors.
This is General Tillington, Chief of Staff, Global Warning, Earth. What we need here is an urgent hookup with the doctor. Over.
I seen scurrying things, like big steel rats, shiny in the darkness.
We don't understand what's going on, but it is clear that there is trouble coming.
What kind of trouble?
A Dalek invasion, Doctor.
Survivors of London! The Daleks are the masters of Earth!
Renaissance of the Daleks by Christopher H. Bidmead, The Facts and the Trivia. It's number 93 in the monthly adventures, recorded on the 16th and 17th of January and released in March 2007. So it was written and released within a couple of months. The Doctor was played by Peter Davison. Sarah Sutton played Visser. Stuart Alexander, the Sergeant. Nicholas Briggs, the Greysh and the Daleks. Richie Campbell as Floyd. Nicholas Steele as Mulberry. William Hope, Virginia Reagan, and John Wainwright made up the cast. Directed by John Ainsworth. Script editor, Alan Barnes. Sound design by Gareth Jenkins. Music by Andy Hardwick. Producer Sharon Gosling. Executive producers were Jason Haig Ellery and Nicholas Briggs. And the cover art by Alex Mallinson. The script had been planned by Gary Russell, but as it recently left and gone to Cardiff, it was one of the first ones that Nicholas Briggs was left with. He felt it was a very typical of the scripts of the age, but Big Finish had moved on a great deal since these sort of stories were being done, but due to a shortage of time, it had to be produced anyway. There was less than 2 months between recording and release of this story. This was the first Big Finish release to feature the new look cover by Alex Mallinson. The Doctor and the story are now featured in a vertical panel on the left-hand side of each disc with just a smaller panel for design and pictures. This was done partly to save money because less design meant less money to pay for the artists. The original story had an exploding TARDIS, again, and the Doctor waking up on Earth with TARDIS bits all around him, like Frontios. William Hope, who stars in this, had also starred with Sigourney Weaver in Aliens. The Pocket Interrogator returns in the first Lucy Miller story, which is also all about the second Dalek invasion of Earth, and is used by Lucy to call the Doctor to her and to rescue her and his great-grandson Alex, though he's 3 years late. After jettisoning the Zero Room in Castrovalva, Beadmead returns it with extra powers, and the events of Logopolis are also recalled. So it's a story with lots of links to past stories of Christopher H. Beadmead, and those are the facts of the trivia.
Thank you, Philip. I also would like to add something potentially from a similar source to where you got yours, and it's the production summary from the Big Finish Companion. This is what Nicholas Briggs wrote. He said, "I hadn't commissioned Chris," which you already mentioned. His first draft turned up when I took over. Chris hadn't written a script or a Doctor Who script for many years, and the kind of thing he did in the TV show was a million miles away from what we were doing in the audios. So, did you listen to this story prior to this, Philip?
I did.
Or had you? You did. Well, I've got to say, when this was announced and when I received it, I was very excited. I saw Chris Bidmead's name. It was the Daleks. It was Nick Briggs' first sort of official story as taking over as the new executive producer. And I recalled being very, very let down at the time compared to what we were getting from Gary as producer. And re-listening to it, I thought, well, sometimes when I re-listen to things, I get a different perception of the story because maybe I wasn't listening to it in the right, headspace at the time. That changes. No, it was the same. So it was a tricky one to get through so many different concepts to try and imagine on audio. He was cramming it so full. I think it was very clever what he was doing. I don't think the cast was taking it very seriously, particularly William Hope. If you listen to the extras, him and Nicholas Briggs are just joking about things, and it wasn't very serious. More suited to season 17, I would have thought, the way they were carrying on. But it's one of those cases like we're down here in the rabbit hole talking about transitioning from TV to audio, and I think this is just one of those cases where it didn't work. And I suspect by looking at interviews of Chris Bidmead and seeing the type of man that he was, I think he would have been quite resistant to any notes to make this more audio friendly. What are your thoughts, Philip?
Well, part of the reason why I listened to it was you said, "Don't bother." And I thought, Dwayne saying "Don't bother." But I'm going to listen to this now because Dwayne's saying "Don't bother." And when I first started, I thought, Dwayne's missing it. It's really good because the first episode's
great.
It starts off really well, and it's jumping around backwards and forwards through time, and it's intriguing, and I have no idea what's going on. And the bulk of the characters are sort of enjoyable to be with, but as they keep piling into the TARDIS, and more characters keep piling into the TARDIS, and then you've got all this bizarre language. one of the things that has always struck me about Christopher H. Beadmead is he can be very critical of other writers and other eras. And he has a go at the lack of science and the nonsense that happened before him. And yet his stories are full of lack of science and nonsense, which I love. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love the things he makes up and the total nonsense he comes up with. But when he's so critical of other people for doing better than he does, it always amuses me. And I must admit, I sat listening to this story and it was just tickling my fancy because all the way through it's bizarre words and concepts and and then using words in bizarre ways, and this Dalek dust is going to get into people's brains, and just so there was half of it was just absolutely brilliant. The idea of the Doctor lands on Earth, the Dalek invasion of Earth should be taking place. It's not. Why isn't it? Why has this general got time viewing machinery? The basic ideas are absolutely brilliant, and then you get all this cast put in, and you've got this Vietnam person, this is an atrocious American accent, which you just can't believe, and so you've got
Terrible.
some really. So you're partly let down by some bad acting that's happening. Peter Davison and Sarah Sutton are doing their best to hold up, I think, what can be some pretty awful things, and then just the obligatory. We need someone to sacrifice themselves at the end of the story, and so there's just a few too many tropes. So at first I thought I was going to really enjoy it, and I thought you must have just been in a bad mood when you listened to it. And then as it went on and on, by the fourth episode, it's sort of, oh no, this is really bad.
You need to trust me.
But I'm glad I listened. Don't get me wrong. I'm glad I listened to it, and it is very much the start of a new era. The sound design is taking a slightly different approach. The cover design is slightly different. This is about Big Finish refining its way, and there's a little while where Big Finish does struggle a bit in terms of working out after Gary's gone the direction it's going to take, and Nicholas finding his feet. And you do sort of feel that there's a few stories that wheeze a bit, and this is certainly a wheezing story. But when you actually talk to people around Big Finish, if they're prepared to go on the record, they were all struggling with it. No one was happy with the story.
Yeah. I mean, there was that period between... Oh, sorry, Troy, you go.
I was just going to say I haven't listened to it for a long time, but it was never my favourite. And I always remember being surprised because if I'm not mistaken, I think Christopher H. Bidmead started in radio. I think he was an actor. And then I think when he started, I think he was critical of the scripts he was getting as an actor, even back then. And so he started writing himself. And I think he was writing for radio. So I had high expectations for this one because I thought maybe untethered by poor budgets or sloppy direction or something like that he would be able to come up with an amazing audio story. And I was a bit the same. I remember liking it, but this kind of, the further it went along, I'm just like, oh God, what's that? What's that about? And so I remember, it's sort of circling down the cliff somewhere along the line. And I thought it was a really great idea. And maybe that's it. Maybe that's part of his secret sauce. He does have good ideas, but they don't always, maybe he's not always able to land the execution.
I suspect more than anything that he was a bit resistant to being edited himself. So that could have been part of the issue at the time. So it was just a case of, righto, let's get it out there. This was commissioned by Gary. Let's do it and get it done and dusted. So they did that. However, another story was on the cards because season 23 was being remade as The Lost Stories, and The Hollows of Time was to bring back the Tractators with the Sixth Doctor and Perry. Here's a trailer.
Coming soon from Big Finish Productions. Doctor Who, The Lost Stories. The Hollows of Time.
Hello. Look up there on the clock tower.
A huge portrait. Some kind of guru. Should we know him?
In a funny sort of way, I think I do. I don't remember.
It was only 2 days ago, Doctor.
If only I could remember. How did it all start? We met. Stream. Actually, indeed we did, Doctor. But that's one of the problems of being a Time Lord, I suppose.
Huh? Problems?
Did we meet in the past or in the future?
I'm afraid we're up against genus Phenomenoptera.
It pulls you! It sucks you in!
Tractators.
Keep back from it! It's like a magnet!
It's eons since my brush with them, but it's all coming back to me. This is a lot worse than I thought.
Pulling me in too!
The Hollows of Time by Christopher H. Bidmead, the facts and the trivia. Number 1.4 in the Lost Stories range. Recorded 30-31 of March 2009 and released in February 2010. It was recorded at the Moat Studios. The Doctor was played by Colin Baker, Nicola Bryant was Perry, also starring Victoria Finney, David Garfield, Hugh John, Trevor Lilydale and Susan Sheridan. The director was John Ainsworth, sound design and music by Nigel Fairs. Script editor and producer was David Richardson, executive producer Nicholas Briggs and Jason Haggerty, and cover art by Alex Mallinson. Christopher H. Bidmead was the Doctor Who script editor for Tom Baker, and his final season and wrote Tom's final story Logopolis and Peter Davison's first story Castrovalva, and one of the best Davison stories actually, Frontios. The Tractators first appeared in Frontios, and this is their first return since that story in 1984. The story was written but abandoned for the 23rd season. Unfortunately, because all the scripts were put on hold and then they were finally thrown out because they decided to come up with a much better idea of the Trial of the Time Lord. Professor Stream was supposed to have been the Master, but Big Finish were unable to get the rights to use the Master in 2009 because he was about to reappear on screen being played by John Sim. So BBC crew said, you can't have the Master. Stream is of course an anagram of Master, which of course was quite common back then. Susan Sheridan had played Trillian in the original Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy series and was suggested by Colin Baker for her ability to play children. Aside from the main cast and Trevor Littledale, this is the only Big Finish production that star the rest of the cast. This is just one-offs for nearly the entire cast of this story. David Garfield uses a voice very similar to that of Anthony Ainley to give the idea that he's the Master. And the whole what can't be we remember at the end also allows for Stream to have been the Master, but the Doctor and Perry just can't seem to remember it. In fact, the Big Finish doubled down on the idea of it being the Master because it was included in the Big Finish Master Collection when Big Finish released their stories of the Master. And that's the facts of the trivia.
Thanks, Philip. Yes, of course it's the Master. It's so obvious it's the Master, it's not funny. Of course, David Garfield played a couple of iconic roles. Well, maybe not iconic, but memorable roles in classic Doctor Who. He played Von Veich in the War Games.
Von Veich, 1917 German front line to central control.
And he also played Neva in The Face of Evil.
Oh, yeah.
So he is in The Hollows of Time as Professor Stream. So he's playing the Master character. So now I just want to read another quote. There's another production summary quote. I read that last time. This one, the last one was from Nick Briggs. This one's from David Richardson. Catch this. In some ways, I took a bit of a back seat on this one, as Christopher Bidmead had requested up front that he didn't want his scripts to be tampered with before they were recorded. So although I did provide notes in a couple of scenes were removed from part 1 at my request, and the very lengthy church hall scene in part 2 was broken up a little, it very much remained Chris's vision for the story. So there you go. David Richardson, producer, and I think he was a script editor for that one too, acted as script editor.
Just
but
washing his hands of the whole story.
Backing away.
Yeah. Once again, this was interesting, but, and I say but, I don't want to say but because this is a tribute episode to Chris Bidmead. I just want to demonstrate how sometimes the transition from TV to audio doesn't work, and this was another one of those, I'm afraid. Great to hear the Sixth Doctor and Perry from season 22, that style, because they'd stopped playing that style in Big Finish, but for the Lost Stories they went back to that, so that was a nice little throwback to that era. But so many different concepts in here, but the Tractators, front and center on the cover, and they're hardly in it. So that I found a little bit frustrating as well, because the tractators, well, we'll talk about the tractators later, but they're not served well as a... I mean, they look great, but when they're actually seen in action on television, they don't look so great. So audio was the perfect opportunity to get the tractators looking in our heads and sounding fantastic. But to not have them included so much in the story was a big disappointment for me, because I still love Frontios and would have liked to have seen more of the tractators. What are your thoughts, Philip?
I think with any Doctor Who monster, when you bring them back, you want to develop them slightly further. And so, the first Dalek story, inner city, can't leave the city, Dalek invasion of Earth, you've got them coming out of rivers, you've got them invading the entire planet. And so you progress them on, you progress them to somewhere else. The first, Angels in the new series, where in Blink, where they're just sort of there. But then by the next story, you've actually got them able to talk, you've got them doing other things as well. So I think any good Doctor Who monster, you want to be able to progress and add to them. I think the trouble with this story is that there's nothing new. In fact, a lot of what they could do in the past isn't there. So the tractators don't even come across as strongly as they did, and can't even do what they did in Frontios, let alone develop any further. As I say, on audio, they should be able to do a lot more, have slightly more powers, more influence, and none of that happened. I do think a lot of the setting is interesting. I think, once again, it's a creative way of starting, with the Doctor and Perry not remembering what's going on and sort of going back and recounting the story. So I do like the storytelling, and I do like the concepts, but once again, it's just not quite played out well enough. And I must admit, I found the whole season, because this whole Lost Stories season, as I listen to them, I know why they weren't made, and I do understand why the entire. Yeah, I think it's good that the season wasn't made, because there's actually not a story in there that I actually think is better than what we got in the Trial series. I don't think they should have done a Trial series. I think they should have just done separate stories. I don't think the Trial particularly worked. It's okay, but I do think it drags on too much. But I do think that none of these stories particularly work. I think it's different to when you get to Sylvester McCoy's Lost season with Andrew Cartmills and his vision with Rain. That I think some of those stories are fantastic stories and work really well on audio. But this first block of all of them, I sort of go, yeah, you know what? I don't think we missed anything with them not being made.
Yeah, standouts for me, there was a story called Hexagora, I think is one, and there was another one called Paradise 5. Is that the PJ Hammond one? The Sapphire and Steel dude? Those two really stood out for me.
Yeah, but they were never made. They were sort of some sketchy concepts which then got written for audio. This was basically a completed script, as was the first couple were completed. There's the Sill one, isn't there, and the Ice Warrior one, which was completed script, which I can't think what it's called, and then the one with the Toymaker. So these three were all completed scripts, and none of them I think are particularly good. And I don't like what they do with the Doctor and Perry. So I do think we've progressed a lot further.
There was a third Lost story as well that was supposed to be in the Trial season. That was written by Chris Bidmead, but that wasn't written. So I'm just curious why Big Finish have never done that, because possibly because of what David Richardson said there. He didn't want to take any notes. He just wanted to push his main vision without too much adaptation. So perhaps that was an issue. Yeah, Troy, did you listen to this season? Did you get it when it was released back in the day?
I listened to this one. I remember being quite curious about this, and I felt that this was the same as the earlier one in the sense that I had, because I'd listened to Renaissance of the Daleks, I had less expectations, and my lowered expectations were met by this one. Let's just say. I think I like the season 23 Doctor and Perry a bit more, and so this felt a step back a little bit, I think. But mainly for me, I just thought in Frontios, I think the Gravis is a really interesting character, and there's certainly, lots of stuff you get that sense that the Tractators, things that they were meant to do, but their costumes in the TV show, you know, prevented them from doing. And so, yeah, I think like you, Dwayne, I thought this would be a great opportunity to maybe really flesh them out and let us see what they could do, but also have the Gravis as this great villain. And yeah, they're sort of like barely in it in this search for the Gravis. I don't know, it didn't work for me at all, I'm afraid. Not for me.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, we're being a little bit critical in the rabbit hole here, but I think perhaps it's time to crawl up out of the rabbit hole and bring some love into this podcast now, because I want to take us back to season 18 and talk about that as a whole for a moment before we get to the individual stories written by Chris Bidmead. Because in season 18, how old was I? I would have been about 7 years old. I think you fellas would have been a few years older than that. For us, I think it was
14,
perfect ages for that particular time. And you know, you've got people who were longtime fans at the time, who were maybe 10 years older than us, that were getting a bit tired of the silliness of Tom Baker, which when I go back to season 17 now, I think it's genius compared to what I used to think of it. But people were looking for that change, and I think for fans, it was the perfect change of direction. What are your thoughts on that, Troy? Where were you at that stage?
I know it is this kind of conventional, consensus that particularly season 17 was silly, but I genuinely did think that. I felt like it was a bit embarrassing and a bit daggy to be a Doctor Who fan as those last few years had gone along. And so, yeah, like I said, I think I was probably 13 or 14, and I really, really liked this season. I particularly liked the Leisure Hive, and it felt, I don't know, I loved the new logo, the Starscape, the music, it was a bit too disco for me, but generally it felt like a breath of fresh air and everything like that. And so I was really excited about this season. And then I saw Meglos and went, oh, okay, the Leisure Hive was just a one-off, and we're back to where we were before. And then it moves on again to full circle. And so from there on in, I really, really enjoyed it.
Philip?
So I was in year 7, and I remember hearing about this season actually from a careers advisor at school who was also a Doctor Who fan, and he brought a newspaper out to me because we were in the corridor just talking about the new Doctor coming, a new season, and a picture of Tom Baker in his new outfit. So that was sort of the first I saw the new outfit. And I remember watching, it was a Doctor Who convention day in Sydney Uni, and so before it was released on TV, I was shown Full Circle and State of Decay. And State of Decay has remained one of my favourite stories ever since. I still think it's utterly brilliant. I can go back to it any time. Thanks, Terence, again. But once again, we've gone back to that dark, haunting stuff like Robert Holmes. And so I was so excited. With Full Circle was okay. State of Decay was brilliant. Then it appeared on ABC TV a couple of months after that. And Leisure Hive and that opening scene on Brighton, and just thinking, I've got to go to Brighton. And I finally got there, raining, freezing cold, middle of summer, typical English weather. But just to walk on the beach where they filmed that opening scene, and I did the whole panning shot with my camera because it was just fantastic to be there. And yeah, Leisure Hive was the whole look of the show was just so different and classy and colourful and rich. And I even liked the Doctor's costume and all the burgundies. And we were just moving to a different age. So that whole season to me was just, it was very exciting. State of Decay, I think, is probably the highlight. Warriors Gate, no idea what was going on. Keep of Traken is magnificent. Logopolis is pretty good as well. Pretty amazing stuff in Logopolis. I don't like how the Doctor regenerates. I think he deserved a bit bigger hero moment than that. I think that was way too downplayed. I think Tom deserves something better. And as much as he's saving the whole universe, but it could have just been done a bit more impressively. and the self-sacrifice could have been a bit more. I'm just pulling out a cord and I can't hang on, sort of. Yeah, but yeah, the whole season, and yeah, it relaunched my love of Doctor Who, and that the next Peter Davison series wasn't as good, and it would actually take a couple more seasons before I think Doctor Who regained. There's some odd stories here and there, but it would take a bit longer before Doctor Who regained it. And actually, that to me is probably the last highlight of Doctor Who. Even though some great stories later on, last two Sylvester McCoy seasons I think are superb. But there's that as a season, as a package, was probably, I guess I was 13, the last time I had a season affect me so hugely.
Troy, I want to just mention Meglos, because for me, as a 7-year-old, or probably an 8-year-old by the time it got to Australia, because we always used to get things a lot later than they were broadcast in the UK. But Meglos was one that really stood out to me. To see the cactus Fourth Doctor was incredible, and that stayed in my memory for years and years to come, and I just could not wait for the repeats years later to come back, because it was a fair while before they showed Meglos again, maybe 5 or 6 years before they showed it again. And I loved it. I can see what you're saying. The jungle sets and everything may be a little bit hard to take, and some of the characters, but I just loved that story. Other standouts for me at the time, watching it for the first time as a kid, were probably the Melker. I found the Melker terrifying. That particularly that cliffhanger to episode 1 where the Melker comes through and the glowing red eyes.
We do seem to have a problem here. Please tell them who we are, will you?
Evil.
Just absolutely adored that. And I think, because I was always trying to get episodes in with my father wanting to watch news on a different channel at the same time. So I was missing episodes all over the place back then and just trying to get in what I can. But because it was Tom Baker leaving, I think everyone was watching Logopolis. So I think I got pretty much most of Logopolis in with the Watcher, and so that regeneration really sticks with me too from that season. But then when I got to see the season properly on the repeats a few years later, recorded them on my off-air collection, it was incredible. I tried very hard to understand Warriors Gate, and I've always tried very hard to understand Warriors Gate. Even recently, reading the re-release of that with an extra story at the end of it. But it's one of those books where the book actually makes less sense than the TV series. It was very, very hard to I don't know if you've read it, either of you fellas, but I just found it incomprehensible. And I find, okay, I'll stick with the TV episodes because they're much easier to understand. I get the basic concepts behind Warriors Gate, but I always think, I mustn't be highbrow enough to get it. But as much as I try, I just can't.
I wish I had
probably my least favourite of the season.
Because I was going to say, Warriors Gate is my favourite classic episode of all time. I loved it.
Oh, wow.
I loved every bit of it. And I think I was very much into Blake Seven and reading sci-fi at the time. So it felt like proper sci-fi to me. And it felt grown up. And there were bits that were funny, but it looked beautiful and weird, and I had no idea what was going on, but I really, really liked that. So, and it's still, I know what you mean about the novelization. You kind of hope that it will unlock a few more things, but it doesn't really. But
no, it locks them all up again.
Yeah, I've always loved that story, and I think that I don't know if it's highbrow, but I think I was starting to get into like art house films and like French films. So yeah, maybe that was me sort of being like a bit of a sci-fi film wanker or something, but I really liked it. And I still do. I really do.
I'm finally getting something done!
Am I right in remembering that it might be, apart from his own stories, it might be Bidmead's favourite story? I just think that that's the kind of concept that he would have loved to get in there.
On the season 18 Blu-ray collection, that writer's room, he sits there, I can't remember which one, but with one of the writers of Meglos, with Andrew Smith, who wrote Full Circle, and with Stephen Gallagher, who wrote Warriors Gate. And he's not very flattering. He's not very complimentary about the others. And obviously Andrew was a very young writer. And I think that was fine. But he very much, I think, was very impressed by the ideas behind Stephen Gallagher's thing. And there is a moment where he sort of says, you wrote a script that would, I think it's something like, you wrote a script that was actually, incredible and really good, but unfilmable. And he refers to, I just drove a tractor through it. And basically was sort of saying that he kind of had to wreck the script a bit to make it a filmable thing. And Stephen does sort of talk about how, I don't know, I guess how upset he was at the time. And he talks about how over the years he still goes up and down about the end result. But with those others, there was, far fewer compliments. So, I think Christopher Bidmead got very, very excited by the script and the ideas behind Warriors Gate.
You mentioned Andrew Smith. Now, there's a writer that we haven't mentioned who perfectly transitioned from television to audio. However, writing hasn't been his career. So he sort of wrote that and then went off and did his career for 30 years. And then he came back and started writing Big Finish, after that. So, not a full-time writer for all those years, but he's done it beautifully and it's still going strong for Big Finish. So that's interesting. Now, Philip, you mentioned that season 18 as a whole, it's felt to you like the last great package in Doctor Who ever. Could it to me, I also get the sense that JNT and Bidmead were also a great duo as a script editor and producer as well. But is that because they were a great duo, or is that because Barry Letts was above them, keeping them together, do you think?
Interesting question. Barry Letts seems to imply he really didn't do very much that season. He was there for advice, and it feels like he's pulled out very early on. He's there getting credited and getting paid, but I really don't think he's doing much at all. I actually think Bidmead and Nathan Turner really got on well. I think because it's Nathan Turner's first job, he doesn't really quite know what he's doing. I think he lets Beadmead have a lot more control. He wants to start wrestling control back. I think Anthony Root never had any authority. I think he was totally outswamped by John Nathan Turner's personality. I mean, John Nathan Turner's this huge personality. I only met him once, and he was just overwhelming in a positive way. But he was just so big, and just so sure of himself, his ideas. But I suspect when he first started as producer, he wasn't quite so much like that. And so it's a bit like when Tom started. Tom was a lot quieter and more sedate, and Ian Marter, Elizabeth Sladen. But by the time Louise Jameson comes along, he's now taken over. And his personality just swamps everyone. I think later on, John Nathan Turner was like that. And it's really not until Andrew Cartmel comes in, actually, and then by that stage, John Nathan Turner just withdraws and just lets Andrew. That's why I think the last two seasons are so good, because John Nathan Turner's backed down and backed out for the last three seasons, but the last two in particular. So I suspect that the two of them are just working really well together. And Christopher Bidmead fitted what John Nathan Turner wanted to do in terms of removing the humour, making it, Doctor Who should be serious. Even though it's not, there's still lots of humour and there's still lots of really special. I think hearing Christopher Bidmead talk about what he thinks he did and what he did do, I think, are often different. Just like as he talks about his scripts and how highfalutin and how science they are, and they're not like that. I actually think listen to what he thinks he's done and what he actually has done are totally different. And the whole the removing of the humour has happened. It's still lots of those scripts are very, very, very funny, and I laugh a lot. So I don't think it's not the direction they said they were taking, but it works.
Well, I can't get everything right.
Well, let's have a look at his specific stories then. We'll start with Logopolis, of course. And if you put Robot next to Logopolis, would you think you were watching the same show?
Not remotely.
Yeah, and
It's amazing that the change over the years, isn't it?
It is, and I mean compared to also Castrovalva to robot, because it's in 7 years what's happened. The thing about Logopolis too, I think you know this. Christopher Bidmead actually reads the audio version, so I've actually listened to Logopolis this week, and he is such a good reader. Like he reads it, you can see his acting background has come out because he's a strong reader, but it's such a beautifully crafted script. And the opening of Logopolis and just the way he describes
he does a
things,
better Tegan than Janet.
He does do a great Australian accent. But just you actually get to see him as a writer really well in Logopolis, more so than the Big Finish we've listened to, because it's his story, his ideas, but also he's so poetic with his writing. And I was blown away by that. But yeah, Logopolis, it has some funny moments. As I say, there's all this jargon and nonsense, techno jargon, which is really just nonsense. It's pseudoscience. I don't know. Chris seems to think it's real science. I mean, none of it's real science, but it's entertaining and it works, and it captures the visual style. Jonathan Tenner's managed to hold back enough budget, which is pretty astounding because usually by the end of the season, shows look garbage. Like they really struggle in different ways. I think all Doctor Who seasons towards the end are really struggling with money. But somehow Logopolis still manages to look good, and there's a lot of flats and things for Logopolis. But even still, the colour and the lights and the costuming and the wigs is all wigs. I mean, the whole season is really about wigs. Let's face it, everyone is wearing the most extraordinary wigs for the wig makers galore in that entire season.
Yeah. In fact, season 18 is kind of explosion at the wig factory, isn't it?
Is there any show which isn't full of wigs? Maybe Warriors Gate?
Full circle. Although Matthew's wearing a wig.
Oh, he is too.
Yeah, but I mean, Leisure Hive, gigantic wigs, and Megalos is all wigs and hairstyles, and State of Decay is all wigs. Keep a Trike and Logopolis. Like, it really is. It's the wig season to take of all wigs. But
not to mention Anthony Ainley.
Yes.
Yes.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, so Troy, give us your thoughts on Logopolis.
I've always been surprised how much I like the first episode. I think it just seems very different to everything that's gone before. It seems very centered in reality. Like, there's people driving down a highway to get to an airport, and they get a flat tire, things like that. I love is the first episode where we see the Watcher. Can't remember.
You do,
yeah, we do.
But yeah, so the first episode I really, really like. I think for me, I was completely taken out by this whole let's flood the TARDIS to get rid of the Master, and I can't help wondering. Like, we were going through these script editors before, I just thought, well, Christopher H. Bidmead is the script editor for season 18. So who was script editing Logopolis? And I guess the answer is him, which would explain, because any other script writer would be like, how does this work? How are they going to survive? Like, I think TARDIS inside TARDIS is, silly science, but it's been done before, and it's an interesting concept. I really liked the idea that Logopolis was kind of like this computer. I mean, the dude that ran it was called the Monitor. Like, there's all of this stuff. It's so computery. And I think that the concept of those people all doing that sort of intoning maths, and so I liked a lot of that. But what I didn't understand in Logopolis, and I think why I like it perhaps less than other people's, is just at the end of it, I couldn't quite work out what the Master was trying to do. I couldn't quite work out how this situation came about. I couldn't work out, and because they were talking about it like such a big thing, like the universe has gone beyond heat death. whatever that is. So the universe has gone beyond heat death. For a big, I completely expected to see the Time Lords. I thought the Doctor would be like, this is so big, it's like the War Games. I need to save the universe. I'm going to have to call the Time Lords or something. And because they kept being mentioned throughout the season, I mean, mainly, I guess, in connection to Romana going back. But yeah, so I like Logopolis less and I think I liked the first episode and the third episode, not so much the second. And the fourth one, I'm with you, Philip, and I think with a lot of people, I wanted the Doctor to go out all guns blazing, not swinging off a thing and just losing his grip. I did love that was a lovely sort of throwback to Terror of the Autons, which I guess is, the first time we see the Master proper. So I did like that.
I mean, all the things you're saying is Christopher's pseudoscience, entropy, heat death, opening up CVs. I want to say, I'm not sure what they were called. What are they called?
CVE. Yeah, aren't they really?
Charged vacuum emboidment.
So pumping out the heat, and so he was going to seal them up to. It's just nonsense science. Which, for someone who
I do
claims,
love. I do love how the novelization, he goes into more depth about what entropy is, and just his language in describing that is beautiful. I will say that the special effects on the Blu-ray are fantastic. So if you rewatch it, do it with the new special effects on the Blu-ray.
And so the other really good thing about Logopolis is just Tom Baker and Matthew Waterhouse. They really do work well together, and both keep it track. And once Lalla Ward's gone, Tom Baker and Matthew Waterhouse are working really well together, and it's really quite tragic because Matthew will never get the opportunity again with the other actors to really be able to shine. And he and Tom are great together.
Agreed. I agree. I will say that you mentioned the audio version before. One thing I like about the audio version of the novelization is they put all different sound effects in. They don't put the theme music in. And one sound effect I really loved was the cloister bell, which is a different sound altogether to what we get on TV. You didn't like it? I loved it. I thought that's how it should have been.
It wasn't that I didn't like it. It just wasn't what I expect. Because the cloister bell, I know what it sounds like, and that just wasn't it.
Yes,
but it made me sit up. And go, oh, that's interesting.
At that moment, the console room echoed to the sound of what might have been a big clock bell, deep-toned and stately. It seemed to be coming from a very long way away, and yet at the same time was somehow sinisterly present in the room. The Doctor stopped dead, as if rooted to the spot. The expression on the Time Lord's face sent a shiver up the boy's spine, and he froze too, and listened. It was the first, but not the last time, Adric was to hear the cloister bell.
It's interesting when you look at, I guess, Logopolis, though, like you think of things like the cloister bell, these are things that are still flapping about. Like there's a few sort of interesting concepts he kind of comes up with that, I don't know, that you've got like the Watcher, who is this sort of in-between state. So, I mean, there'd never been anything like that before, but God knows we've got extra doctors flapping around everywhere now. Like, there's a lot of interesting things in this script that keep coming back. So they, I think that's kind of testament to him. Fortunately, block transfer computation hasn't returned, which is appropriate.
And just when you thought Logopolis was the story where we had more action inside the TARDIS than any other story, possibly besides the Invasion of Time, we get Castrovalva, which is the first story for the Fifth Doctor, and pretty much the first two episodes are set completely inside the TARDIS. Was that something that excited you as young fellas, Troy?
I really liked it. I think as an adult, it's a very strange way to kick off a brand new season. But as a kid, I was really sort of intrigued by it. And I think I liked the fact in Logopolis suddenly the TARDIS is all being explored again, and it's been a while, and, you know, suddenly we were able to cast aside some of those hideous memories of the hospital corridors of the Invasion of Time.
Oh, I love it.
I like that.
Oh, no. These places look like they belonged part of the TARDIS, and so exploring that even further was really good. I also think, for me, I was really interested in watching sort of Tegan and Nissa's relationship develop. I've never quite understood what happened to Adric, or what was him and the Master were doing. I don't know. I don't understand it. I also don't understand why. I don't know, if you're plunging the TARDIS towards, you know, event 1, like if you're going to blow the whole thing up, why have you got a backup plan? And a very elaborate, weird backup plan. But purely in terms of setting it in the TARDIS, I really, really enjoyed that. And I thought that it was, I don't know, I just thought no other story, well, I mean, I guess there's the Edge of Destruction, but no other story has kind of explored the TARDIS in that way for such a long time. So yeah, I really appreciated that.
As dealing with the idea of recursion as well. So another scientific concept, I guess, that because Bidmead did write for New Scientist, didn't he? He wrote a couple of articles. He was doing things along those lines, so he was always interested in things like that. And that, I mean, because it was a new Doctor, I think my parents liked All Creatures Great and Small, so they would have tuned in to see Tristan Farnan as the new Doctor. So Castrovalva is one of my early memories too of Doctor Who. But the more I watch this over the years, I never get sick of watching this one. So, and the same for Logopolis too. I mean, you mentioned, Troy, that the experience has sort of lessened over the years, but for me, it just sort of re-emphasizes that, I guess, childhood memory that I had. I was probably quite impressionable at the time. So, Philip, what about you in terms of Castrovalva? What are your memories?
Well, I was once again of the age where this was very exciting and new Doctor, and I would have known Edge of Destruction back then, but in many ways it is just a remake of Edge of Destruction, which, you know, done in colour.
Yeah, it is.
So it's nicely done. I mean, I do think, you know, Janet and Sarah are still finding their feet in terms of playing off each other, and the whole if index file. So there's all sorts of really bad, tacky stuff that happens as well, which is just sort of set up.
Of course, if we had an index file, we could look it up in the index file under index file.
But yeah, it's fun, and when they get to arrive at Castrovalva, and, you know, the location work done there is quite lovely. So yeah, like all Peter Davison stories, most of them are just, they're fine, they're good, they're entertaining, but they're just, you know, there's only a few that really pop, and it really is his third season. Most of the shows his third season pop. It's just a shame it took them a while to quite work out what they were doing, which I'm not sure why it took them so long. But no, lots of fun. I mean, I don't think we needed the Master again. There was a bit too much Master. Actually, there's a bit too much Master altogether, to be honest. Andy contracted to do one story every season. I'm not sure it was a smart move to make. And I guess at this stage, we'd all...
Well, he did 2 stories that season, didn't he?
Yeah. And the previous one too. Because, you know, with Trimus,
of course,
at least. So we're not bored with him yet, but we will become bored with him. I think. Like, oh no. And because his plans were so... But I mean, that was the Master, wasn't it? All his plans were so convoluted.
I mean, they never made a lot of sense all through the years, but I think we were more giving it Delgado ones than some of these they're just batshit. I will say with Castrovalva, I feel like they needed to get to Castrovalva a bit earlier. I think the TARDIS stuff goes on a bit, and then tromping, you know, with the zero room doors into a coffin and all of that was kind of a bit boring. And then, oh, look, there's a monster at the end of episode 2, but it's just people in masks. So I think Castrovalva suffers because it takes a bit too long to get there. And I think you could have made more of these people sort of realizing they're kind of on... I mean, you see so much of this in TV now, like artificial intelligence, like robots or whatever, on the edge of consciousness, and what that means when they realize they're not real. Like, it's there, but that's something really, really interesting. And I think this place sort of folding in on itself like an Escher drawing, I think all of that is really, really interesting. And I think that it needs I don't know, maybe it needs a monster. Maybe it's lacking a monster for me, maybe.
Yeah, I think the whole post-regeneration stuff just goes on too long. I mean, yeah, John Pertwee, there's an episode, the first episode, but he's basically, unconscious or tied up. He's not crazy. And even Tom Baker, it's a bit strange for the first 15, 20 minutes, but then we have the Doctor. The fact that you don't get the Doctor until the next show, the last 3 minutes, it's just a bit too late, I think.
He seems to want to make the Doctor much more vulnerable than perhaps he has been in the past. And you think about, you've got the Doctor, you've got Tom Baker, like, staring at a figure on a bridge going, oh, you shouldn't be there. And suddenly it changes everything. It changes him for the rest of that story, because I guess he knows he's going to die. And he's very vulnerable, towards the end, and he's just swinging off the doodah. So again, it's making him more vulnerable rather than heroic, which I find disappointing. And that's sort of taken much further in Castrovalva. Like, Peter Davis is having fun doing impressions of other Doctors and things like that, so that can be fun. But yeah, it's taken him just kind of effectively in this white, weird-looking coffin being wheeled around on a pram is just nuts. And so it just takes a really long time. So yeah, there is something about Christopher Bidmead. We can get to Frontios as well, but there's something about making the Doctor as vulnerable as possible throughout. And that, I think, as a contrast to Tom Baker's era, maybe that was the point. But I think it's like, let's don't forget that, the Doctor's the hero of this show. And so I always found that disappointing, that vulnerability. I felt like he did it too much. But, I mean, look at what he does. He doesn't like the TARDIS either. He's exploring it, and that's lovely, but he also wants to flood it. He wants to burn it into Event 1. He blows the thing up in Frontios. So yeah, again, it's like, even if he's not making the Doctor himself vulnerable, he's taking away the protection of the TARDIS from him almost in each story. Like, it's almost like the TARDIS is trying to kill him in Castrovalva. So yeah, there's something there. I think he was trying to create a new Doctor, I guess.
Yep. So Castrovalva would have been the first time that he was being script edited by someone else. I can't remember who the script editor was on Castrovalva, whether it was Anthony Root or Eric Saywood. It might have been Saywood's first one. I'm not sure.
I think it was Anthony.
I think it's Anthony Root, I think.
Yeah. He might have done the first 4. But then you wanted some monsters, Troy. So a couple of years later, Chris Bidmead comes back and gives us some monsters in Frontios. I'll just say, first of all, that I was sitting at my grandmother's place one day, and there was a magazine-style show, like the afternoon show, but I think it was some other show that was going before that. And all of a sudden, in the middle of this show, the Davison theme came on, or the opening credits came on, and Frontios came, and it was part 2 of Frontios, where they were saying the TARDIS has been destroyed, and I was just transfixed. I'd never seen it before, and I just could not believe what I was seeing. And I thought, oh no, I'm seeing this episode of Doctor Who, and I didn't even realise it was on. They were showing a clip, and it stopped at the cliffhanger bit, so I got about 1 minute of it, and it was a couple of years before I got to see Frontios in full, and I was just hanging to see this one. Were you satisfied with the monsters in this one, Troy?
Actually, mainly I was. I didn't mind the look of them. I love the idea of gravity. I love the idea of people disappearing into the Earth. I thought that was really creepy. And I love the idea that these creatures were around. It's just in the execution, they kind of don't do a lot, and they bob around a bit, which, is a bit of a Doctor Who monster trait, I guess. the idea, I know there's sort of original ideas about the Gravis and body parts and things like that, and some of that was poo-pooed because it was a bit too gruesome. But no, I was happy enough with these monsters. I thought they were, I felt like they were proper monsters. And I like the idea that you've got all of these colonists thinking that the attack is coming from, above. The call is coming from inside the house. Like, it's actually coming from underground. But I really, really enjoyed that. I think that was a really quite clever concept. And so, I quite liked them.
And I was so busy being negative about the Hollows of Time. The one thing I really enjoyed about the Hollows of Time was Nigel Fair's callbacks musically to Frontios. He was doing the pan flutes motifs throughout that too, which was a throwback to this. So I really enjoyed that. What about you and your experience with Frontios? Did you see this, Philip, when it first went out?
I did. So, and really enjoyed it. I think it's Mark Strickson's best story, and he gets to some good spitting acting as well as other acting.
Gets to dribble.
Strong.
Yeah.
It gets to dribble. In fact, it's the whole cast is so strong in this one, which is the whole production is lifted because all the cast is strong. It's weird being studio bound the whole way. I do think it could have done with a bit of external film work, but you get used to this world. And I do think it actually does. It manages to create an entire world, entire atmosphere in the story. And I think world building by this stage, Doctor Who wasn't as good at. And so when you actually went back to this, creating a whole world, and the fact it stays in place. I mean, Christopher Beadmead, as we've talked about before, tends to move locations an awful lot. And you've got episode here, episode there, and you don't feel settled. Where this is settled, you've got a family, you've got the hospital, you've got the captain, you've got the crew. It's all understandable characters, maybe slightly overacted sometimes, but on the whole, it's a group of people who you get to know and associate with. And the big Eastern Bar of the Earth is just terrifying. And the tractators, when they don't move, are really good. So
yes, they look awesome. Yeah,
yeah. It's just a shame when they move them. So if they're trying to work a better way, I do wonder whether they'd actually put them on rails and just glide to them like Daleks. It would have been more effective. But they just don't let them move anywhere.
Because they were supposed to be coiled, weren't they, and sort of uncoil like caterpillars. But
they're hard dancers. They're hard dancers to be really flexible for these costumes, and the costumes just wouldn't let them do it. So a bit more.
I can't believe Troy said they were bobbing around. They weren't bobbing around. They were bopping around dancers.
Bopping, yeah, that's right.
Are you all right?
Get her out of here.
I just remember the tentacle thing sort of
bugging around. I do think they could be really done. I mean, the new series could do them very well now, and you'd probably CG a lot of them and CGI. They're a great concept, and the TARDIS being blown up. I remember being quite horrified by that at the time. Didn't quite make sense. Like, why would something explode? Made no sense at all. And
why would something explode and the hat stand remains?
Yeah, it's just and bits of the doors. It's just a bit strange. Anyhow, it was,
and then cause a heart attack.
Yes.
Oh yeah,
that was strange.
Oh, but they were hit by a bit of shrapnel or something. Is that what happened? Hit by a rock.
The hat stand had a bit of excess TARDIS power in it, and Turlo pointed it at Plantagenet, and it zapped him.
Oh, that's right. No, I thought really what had happened was he'd been struck by a piece of rock.
I can't remember.
Which is what caused the heart attack. It's just that they thought it was the hat stand because he pointed at him. Because he sort of... Oh, okay.
I think I might be recalling... I think I'm recalling the novel where it says it in there, and then when you watch it, it's kind of doesn't really work. He points the hat stand and then goes, ugh, like that, whereas the novel's a bit more explicit about that, I think.
What was that?
Oh, just residual energy from the TARDIS.
Look out!
Okay.
That might be why it's in my head. I don't know. Or I could just be making it up.
Yes.
That's always possible.
The memory cheats. It's been a long time since I watched Frontiers. Might go put it on.
It's interesting, Philip, what you say. I think you're spot on. All 4 episodes are happening in the same place. You actually have time to get to know these characters and they are sort of fleshed out. Those other two stories are jumping around from different locations, and yeah, you actually have time to spend with these characters, and you do see the world. Like I feel like he come up with an interesting world for Castrovalva. It's only towards the end that you realise it doesn't really make a lick of sense. But Frontios was
I mean,
very
Castrovalva.
well thought out.
Yeah, I mean, look, Castrovalva, you've got the main cast for 2 episodes, and then everyone else is introduced in episode 3 and 4, so you just don't have time to get to know them. Logopolis has, Tegan's aunt in the first episode. You've got, the monitor comes in, and Sarah comes back, Mr. comes back episode 3 and 4. So you've just got piecemeal characters just coming in, going out. Frontiers, it's the same cast the whole time. And so you know them, and it gives you time to spend time with these people. Yeah, but which he doesn't do in his other stories.
So, what would you say Frontios would be your favourite of his 3 TV stories? Both of you, Troy?
Look, I think so, but I have a sort of fondness for parts of Castrovalva. I think it's his most traditional. I think it's got a better structure. I think a lot of good things are all coming together in Frontios, but it's slightly more perhaps traditional. Perhaps not as an imaginative as something like Castrovalva. I'm not sure.
Because he was writing that. I think in Castrovalva he was trying to write the Doctor as an old man in a young man's body with some of the impersonations that he was coming out with, Davison was, of the other Doctors. And in Frontios we have him, pulling out the little glasses as well that even Tennant refers to in the new series. So the new series, the revived series, it's not new anymore, is it?
20 years old.
Yeah. So he was trying to do some interesting things with the character of the 5th Doctor as well, I think. But yeah, I think as a story, I think Frontios probably would be my preference. But I just think they're all so different. I think they're all so different. I put off watching Frontios because I've always thought that I'm just going to wait for season 21 to come out on Blu-ray, so I won't watch any of those just in case. But then season 13 got announced. I thought, I can go back to season 21 and watch some of those again now. So
it's coming soon. I think Frontiers is probably one. As I said, I think it's probably one of the best Peter Davison stories there is. But both Logopolis and Castrovalva are event stories. And so you've got regeneration in one, you've got a new Doctor in the second, and so being events lifts them probably better than more than they deserve, because
you're right.
If there's essential stories you've got to watch, where you've got to watch Logopolis, you've got to watch Castrovalva. You don't have to watch Frontiers, but I think Frontiers is a far better and one of the best fifth Doctor stories there are. So I want to see a good example of the 5th Doctor. Frontiers is the best example, but it's not event. No companion leaves, no one comes, and that whole season is full of events. When you think about it, because Tegan's about to leave, Turlo's about to leave, Perry's about to come, Jock's about to regenerate. So it's event after event after event that season. And so Frontiers is just a normal Doctor story in there. So I think it loses that for that reason. But I do think it's probably a much better written and a better story.
I think it's better written. As I said, I think it really benefits from being in one place and all of the characters together. And there are some big ideas at play, perhaps not some of the big ideas in the other scripts, but of the 3 of them, I would definitely watch Frontios more, and then Castrovalva, and then Logopolis least. Like I said, I find myself not going back to Logopolis much, but I do like the first episode. And when we had Matthew Wardhouse out here, and him doing the sort of commentary for that first episode, it just reminded me how interesting that was to see just him and Tom together, and how well that all came together, and that sort of the melancholy, almost sense of doom that was through it all with the music and the way it was filmed and everything. So I've always liked the first episode of Logopolis a lot.
I wonder whether just the fact that Eric Sayward would have script edited Frontiers is probably why it's lifted it a bit, because he was script edited at this time.
Yeah.
That's a thought.
It is an interesting you could be right, you know. Maybe Anthony Root didn't feel confident to do it because he was a bit of a, you know, fill-in script editor. So it sounds like no one was script editing Logopolis. Castrovalva doesn't feel like, it feels so Christopher H. Bidmead that it doesn't feel like anyone else was editing it. And again, there are bits of it that don't make a lick of sense. Whereas Frontios does seem to be, and it's more action-y too, which I guess is also a bit of the Sayward trait. So yeah, you could be right. I read something, I just want to mention, I read something a little while ago, but I think Christopher H. Bidmead was talking about Russell T Davies and said this was like when the show first came back this was probably in 2008 or something like that. But yeah, he was quoted as calling Russell T Davies a first draft writer. So, you know, the first draft is the thing that gets made, and there's not enough editing and there's not enough polishing. And I remember reading that and just sort of thinking, good God, man, some of the stuff that, you know, that Bidmead's got, you know, some of the stuff in Bidmead's script that's been allowed through because he's either refuses to be script edited or hasn't. I just thought that was an astonishing claim to make. However, now that we're in, you know, we've had these last two sort of Russell T Davies seasons again, and I'm like, oh, he might be onto something now. If he'd said it recently, I'd be like, yeah, that does feel like a first draft because it's not coming together. So yeah, I just thought that was really interesting.
Reading the writer's tale, Russell T definitely in his first 4 seasons was doing draft after draft after draft, and Julie Gardner was pulling them apart, and he was open to being pulling apart. I don't think anyone touched him this time. I think he just no one else looked at his scripts or touched his scripts, and I think that's really why they fell apart.
I agree, because you look at those last two sort of season finales of both of those last 2 seasons. It's just like anyone who understands, I don't know, script structure and story and everything would be sitting there going, what on earth is that bit? Why is that there? That means nothing. And so, yeah, I think you're right. I don't think anyone is. And I don't know if that's him refusing or maybe people are trying or maybe they're
it's him refusing.
Yeah, so
Julie Gardner and him had a falling out and he wouldn't listen to it anymore, and it shows.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting... Yeah, I mean, I suppose we think about like script editors contributing to, you know, tone and all of these different things, but I think we've recently experienced what a season looks like without a proper script editor or without robust script editing. And so, yeah, it's very interesting how you don't necessarily notice how something works until you see the absence.
Until it doesn't.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So getting back to Bidmead, if he was to have an enduring legacy, what would it be for you guys? Philip?
It'd be season 18. Just the fact he brought in a whole new look and feel to the show. He ended Tom Baker's era. He began Peter Davis's era. So there's a epoch of time where he had this major influence on the show, and just how it looked and felt was radically different to what had come before.
I agree. I think that, I mean, you look at the difference between the show between like the Horns of Nymon and Logopolis, and like that's a big leap. What I also think,
but not a big space of time, is it? Only a year.
Not at all. But I mean, you think about Philip's right. You think about that season. You've got the arrival of Adric, Nissa, Tegan, Romana leaving, a new master,
K9 leaving,
K9 leaving. I mean that's a lot. I think the other thing that really, I think what makes season 18 shine a lot for me is those new writers, those new voices. So I love the fact that if I agree that I think season 18 as a whole is a lovely legacy for him. But I love the fact that he discovered and nurtured Andrew Smith, and that he worked with other writers like Stephen Gallagher, who was very new very new at the time. And so I think the guys who wrote Meglos were also very new to screenwriting as well. So I think bringing fresh voices into the show, I think that really lifts the season as well.
Yeah, I think probably the Master is probably a big one for me, bringing the Master back, and he would have had a lot to do with the creation of the Fifth Doctor as a character as well. Even though he wasn't a part of season 19, he did write Castrovalva, so he would have had a lot to do with that. And we've sort of established that he probably wasn't overly edited in that, and would have talked a lot about it because the casting would have happened long before he was out of his role anyway. So he would have talked a lot with J&T about it, no doubt. Yeah. So yeah, it hasn't done a big chunk of Doctor Who like a lot of these other legends that we talk about, but I still think his contribution to the show is pretty legendary, and I'm sure he would agree.
Yes.
All right. Thanks for chatting with me about that, guys. It's been great. Before we go, for anyone who's interested, Troy Hunter is our author's name. I'm going to put a link to his two books down below, so check the show notes for that. If you were to recommend anything you've been watching or listening to, Philip, I've got to ask you first.
I recommend two things. So, audiobook-wise, Logopolis is a really lovely listen. I love listening to all the Doctor Who novels on audio. Logopolis is really well done, and I said, just to hear the author read his own work is great, and he's a great actor. He does a really good job with all the voices. The other thing in terms of what I've been watching, is I've just finished watching through I think it's Netflix, I forget what it is, called Hostage. So, all set in the UK with the new British Prime Minister, starring, I can't think of her name, the actress who played the TARDIS in
Ciaran Jones.
Ciaran Jones is playing the British Prime Minister, brand new to the role. Her husband's a doctor who works with, it's kind of like Doctors Without Borders, got a different name. He gets kidnapped in the first episode, and there's all these demands on what she has to do. And will she allow her husband to die? And then you bring in a French president who's also female as well, and interplay in politics, and she's being blackmailed, and they're both being blackmailed, and so all these things happening. It's just a really good 5-part drama, and Ciaran Jones is an amazing actress. She keeps looking like Keely Hawes to me. Like I keep thinking, boy, they look alike. But it's at number 10, and it's a really, really fun. Well, fun's probably the wrong word. Suspenseful. Never quite sure what's going to happen. A few twists and turns. Try to work out who's the moles, who are the moles, what's going on, and it's action packed, suspenseful, and great relationship stuff. So if you want to watch a good show, Hostage.
Very good.
In terms of Audioland, I only last week or the week before listened to Spare Parts again, which I hadn't done for a really long time. But
good.
Shock horror, there's another podcast I was listening to, I think Watchers in the Fourth Dimension. They've been working their way through everything, and so they've kind of gotten up to, I think they just finished the end of season 19, and so they were looking at Spare Parts, kind of, because that's sort of naturally where it sits. It's sort of between Tegan and Tegan kind of thing. And I'd forgotten how much, I mean, I know it's got this wonderful reputation anyway, but I'd forgotten how good it was. But I'd mainly forgotten how good Sarah Sutton is in it. And I just kept thinking, I remember Peter Davison at some point just sort of saying, actually, I think Sarah Sutton, or the Nyssa character, would work best with my Doctor. And I just never agreed with that at all. But listening to this again, I just thought, oh, yeah, I'd forgotten how lovely it is when there's just the two of them. So there's that. The TV thing, there's a new series, a kind of prequel to Alien. The Alien movie is called Alien Earth, which I am loving. It is fantastic. And I think it's about 4 episodes in. It's really unusual. It's really different. It's creepy. It's playing with really fascinating concepts. And again, that thing about, I won't give too much away, but that thing about, there's so much of it at the moment. It's kind of artificial intelligence and what could that look like in a few years, and particularly related to spare parts, also what would happen if you put someone's consciousness into another body. And in the case of this show, there are children going into adult bodies. So I won't say anything more, but it's fascinating stuff. And yeah, it's really, really worth watching. So yeah, they would be my recommendations.
What are you doing?
I was reading recently about a bit of research on Martin Luther and the Reformation, and I came across a reference to the Diet of Worms, which was a Catholic conference where Martin Luther was hauled in front of him to answer for his crimes. So I realised that Bernie Summerfield had a title called The Diet of Worms, written by Matthew Sweet, and I'd never heard it. I bought all the Bennies when they were on special once from Big Finish and just never listened to all of them. And so I dug that out and gave it a listen. It was great to get back into some Benny Summerfield. And Matthew Sweet, he's got a very unique way of writing. His Doctor Who monthlies that he's done, I think he did one called The Year of the Pig, which was very unusual with Maureen O'Brien. He's done one or two others. I think he did one about a wombat or something last year, didn't he? With the Fourth Doctor, a talking wombat was, or something along those lines, which I really loved. I remember loving that. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but Diet of Worms and Benny Summerfield reminded me, Philip, that we've got to get into some Benny Summerfield at some point. We've been saying it for years now. We better just do it soon. So that's that, and I'm still working my way through The Fugitive. I'm still back in the 60s. I can't get out of that era. That's my favourite period of television, and The Fugitive is now one of my favourite TV shows. It is incredible, and I'm up to series 3. There's 30 episodes per season. There's lots of them, so I'm slowly working my way through. Loving it.
I've always wanted to watch that. I've never seen an episode of it. I'm ashamed to say.
The movie's great.
Well, it's shorter.
It's a little bit shorter, yeah. But the series is absolutely incredible. Get you in within like 5 minutes. It's just got you on the edge of your seat with episode 1. Yeah, doesn't always have you gripped like that all the way through, but it's it's still very, very good. 3 seasons in black and white, 1 in colour. So I'm still working my way towards the colour. Good stuff. All right. Thanks, Troy. It's been great to have you on. You haven't been on the podcast with us before, have you?
I haven't. No, this has been very exciting.
That's fantastic. And it's going to be good to catch up with you again soon at Carol Ann Ford. So if you haven't got tickets for that, hopefully you still can get tickets, Philip, and you can get them from sirensofaudio.com. So we'll see you in person in a few weeks. Troy?
Yeah, that'll be great. Looking forward to it.
Indeed.
Philip, been wonderful to be in your company as always.
You too, Dwayne. Always love to see you.
And we'll see you soon too. Catch you all next time. This has been the Sirens of Audio, remembering Christopher H. Bidmead with our guest Troy Hunter and your hosts Philip Edney and Dwayne Bunny. Theme music by Joe Kramer. Catch up with all the latest info, including news on our live events at sirensofaudio.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our brand new podcast, Blake 7, The Way Back. Got some feedback? Send your email to sirensofaudio@gmail.com, or you can find us on all our social media at Audio Sirens. Thanks for listening, audiophiles. We'll hear you next time.